Okay, welcome to part 4 of our video tutorial series on Adobe Premiere Pro. And now we've got a bunch of stuff happening in our slideshow. We've got titles, we've got effects, we've got audio happening, and it fades out at the right point, so it's really starting to come together. What we want to do next is we want to look at creating motion effects. So using still images is a nice technique, and it's an easy way to make something that looks really effective, but they're still image. At the end of the day, they're still images, so they don't move around at all. And sometimes with video, you want to give the illusion of movement or motion, and you can do this really easily in Premiere. So we're going to use this lotus flower clip as our example. So I'm just going to double click on it, and that pops it into my source window here. You can see, and you can actually see here's what it looks like in the timeline. Here's what it is in my source window. It's zoomed in a little bit more, but we're not going to worry about that right now. What we want to do is we want the flower to start like it is, like you see here in the program window, and then slowly zoom in over time. So to do that, we're going to click on our effect controls, and when this opens up, you see a few different options here on the left hand side. In Adobe Premiere, whenever you see a triangle that's pointing to the left like this, it means that there's a menu there that you can open. And so you can see if I just toggle this on and off, I can open and close that menu. When I open that, it gives me a whole bunch of different options. Okay, it also gives me a timeline here that matches my timeline down below. So it's just giving me a really zoomed in view of this timeline. So I can scroll through and say, okay, you know, I want to get really fine detail here. This is where I want my effect to start. Okay, and then I can just set up my timeline exactly where I want it for the next thing to happen. And a motion effect where you're actually zooming something in is a scale effect. So you're actually scaling it, making it larger, making it smaller. So the scale effects, what you can do is you see there's this little stopwatch little circle here. This is the animation toggle. So it allows you to turn on and off the animation effects. So if I just click on this, it's going to do is going to add what's called a keyframe to my timeline right at the moment that I want my scale effect to start. And then basically it's very similar to what we did with the audio, where we were rubber banding the audio. We set a keyframe, and then we set another keyframe, and then whatever happens from one keyframe to the other is what our effect is going to be. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So I want my effect to start here. I've put a keyframe there, and I want my effect to end here. So then I'm going to click and add another keyframe. So now I have 2 keyframes. If I just expand my scale menu here, you can see that it gives me a slider that I can adjust the scale, and it gives me a couple of different options here. So if I'm on my second keyframe and I want my my image to be much larger by that point, then I can just use this slider and I can zoom it in. See, right to there maybe. So what's going to happen now is when I'm at this point in the video, at this keyframe, the movement is going to start. And then you see I'll just go slow here. Over time, it's going to zoom in and get bigger. And if I play this at real time then, you see that it zooms in nice and slow and then transitions to the next thing. So the timing is pretty good. If I decided that I wanted it to be a bit faster, all I need to do is move my keyframes closer together. So the effect's going to start here and then stop here, which is only a couple of seconds later. So you'll see now it'll be much faster. And I say, okay, well, that's all right, but I think I'd rather have it longer. So I stretch them out again. Yeah, and even the transition even keeps going as, so the zoom in keeps going even as the transition happens into the next piece. So I kind of like the way that looks. I could even do it on the other end where I move this keyframe back so that it's already moving when it comes to the transition. Okay, so So that's how you do a simple motion effect. Again, that's done with your effect controls inside of your effects, and you can see that there's a bunch of different things that you can do in here. You can also play with the positioning on the screen and that sort of thing as well. So next we're going to apply a motion effect to a title, which is a very similar process to applying a motion effect to a video clip. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over to where my title is existing here in my timeline. I'm going to select that title, so I'm just going to click on it once and then go to my effect controls, and you'll see that my title is here ready to have effects applied to it. So again, I can scrub along my timeline to get it to the point that I want my motion effect to begin, and I can set a keyframe. In this case, we're going to actually change the position of the title so that it sort of floats across the screen as it's appearing. So I'm going to set a keyframe by using the little keyframe add remove keyframe. So set the keyframe where you want the title to begin, where you want the movement to originate, and then move your timeline indicator to where you want that movement to end and add a second keyframe. So we've got our first keyframe and our second keyframe. Right now the title's in the same place, the same position, but we want it to move. So I'm going to keep it in the same place for the beginning, but at the end I want it to end up in a different spot. So I'm just going to move my timeline indicator to the second keyframe, and then I can select right here in the program window, I can select this and I can move it across to the lower corner, and you'll see that it actually gives you an indicator of the path that this title is going to take as it moves over time. So now I can back my timeline up, and when I play this, you see that it does a nice transition, a nice move from one end of the screen to the other. If I wanted it to maybe take a little jog in its path, so not just do a straight path, but I want it to sort of jog out and then down, then I would just simply add a third keyframe in between those other two keyframes, and I would move it to a third position. So you can see now that my path is going to take almost sort of an arc kind of position across the screen. So play this. So you can really start to play around and make your timeline do exactly what you want it to, and make your elements do exactly what you want them to as they move around the screen using these motion effects. So that's how you put a motion effect on a title. You can have some fun with this and play around with it a little bit. Again, it takes a bit of getting used to. Go through the steps a few times until you feel more comfortable with it, and I'm sure that before long you're going to be having things flying all over the screen.